All right, well, I'm Dave Wasteman, and I'm happy to be here today with three of my friends. Will Larson on the left, Andy Ford, Troy Wilensky. It's fine minerals that I want to define and kind of understand how you feel about what really makes a fine mineral. We all think of it differently, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very open space. Some people will be based on size. I think the kind of basic thing is perfection, right? For most mineral collectors, I think that's going to be the thing. Strength of color based on what else exists out there, luster. If you guys have any other.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have a slightly different take on this.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. So I have a personal philosophy where a mineral has to move you. There's an emotional connection to it.
You bet.
And one of my clients actually explained this to me very well. He said, when you look at a beautiful sunset and there's an emotional connection to it, rocks can do the same thing.
Oh, you bet. Yes. I agree.
You got anything?
Yeah, I would agree. I like to be a little more specific with my definition. I like a little bit of drama associated with the rock. I like when there's that little flare, maybe it's a little architectural. You'll have a dominant focal crystal sitting right on the top. I like that very dramatic, very enrapturing presentation.
Architecture is a word that didn't come up previously. I like that word. I think another word that we could use along with that, and may be part of the architecture, is balance.
Yeah.
The presentation, that's another word I use sometimes. The presentation has to be balanced. The architecture is a bonus, but the way it's put together really is important. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, I think most of us are looking for, isolated crystals. Kind of depends on what exists, though, right? Like sometimes certain formations, they don't exist in some ways. So, I mean, of course, we all would love to have a vanadinite flawless that big round right on top, but that's in my imagination. It doesn't exist in reality, right? So of course, it depends on what what you've seen. So certain people just don't know kind of everything that exists out there, and that can be, I think, the hardest part of this hobby is you think you've seen the finest, and then later you see later, and you're like, okay, wow, I was way off, Yeah.
Well, is the most important thing aesthetic, though? I mean,
I would agree.
Yeah, aesthetics.
I think that the term aesthetic has different subdivisions of it. I would think that aesthetic is a broad spectrum, and then I would say that within the term aesthetics you have, like we said, architecture, we mentioned balance, we mentioned isolation, the drama aspect.
Are we defining beauty?
I think fine minerals.
I
think they embody beauty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think that's why there's so much opinion around it, right? Because how do you define beauty? And it's so hard because each person's going to have a different opinion on it. But as you start to continually to look at what we call fine minerals, I think that there's a lot of overlap.
Let's say it's a mineral that isn't very common. It's not one that you see every day, and it doesn't occur very often. But you have one, and it's maybe one of the best ones of its species or something. It's a focal crystal. It's still, everything is about it right, but it's not gemmy. Doesn't have the greatest color or luster. Is it still a fine mineral to the collector?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to define when we're not looking at an actual specimen, right? So I think it may be easier if we maybe whip. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have one that Andy's not going to like. I know it's not his taste.
And that's the best part about this industry, the discourse of,
at least I don't think he's
like
going to.
that.
Because there's no focal crystal. Okay,
No,
That's perfectly beautiful.
So there's no focal crystal here. But it is beautiful,
It is
right?
beautiful.
Like to me, this is a
Say
fine
what it
mineral.
is first. Say what
So-
you're looking at first.
So let's show the camera what we're looking at. So this is
Yeah.
this is a vanadinite, which is why I said that earlier.
Yeah.
This is a vanadinite from Morocco, and they do look like red barrels. They don't look like vanadinites because they are so gemmy, super high luster. I don't know if the camera's gonna be able to see. Super sharp and no damage and nice size too. So I really, really enjoy this piece. I think it's a gorgeous piece here. I'll let you guys kind of pass it around.
Yeah, I think that this is super fine. This would definitely fit the definition of a fine mineral because, sure, there might not be one dominant focal crystal, but what there is there's a nice sprinkled isolated crystals all over. There's no jumble where they're all competing for the spotlight.
True.
Every one of these crystals, they look complete, they look brilliant, they're perfect. We already mentioned the term perfection. So I totally think that this would embody the definition of a fine mineral.
So I like all those terms, but I actually break my collection down into more simple things.
Okay.
I have a collection that I just call sparkly stuff, and this would fit right in there.
It's the most Troy term ever.
It is. It's because sometimes I think we overcomplicate it. I have a sparkly stuff, I have a pyrite and a pyrite suite, and I have another collection called relics, which are minerals that look like other things. And this would definitely fit into my sparkly collection well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so the other thing to talk about is rarity here, right? There was one, as far as I know, there was one pocket of these vanadites, about 5 or 6 pieces only. So extremely rare, hard to get. Vanadinite itself is very common, especially from Morocco. There's been vanadinites on the market for 50, 60 years. But that one is really stands out because of that luster, the crystal shape. It's just a very unique piece. Again, one of 5. So scarcity plays a huge part in this market as well.
The luster is the word that I see.
I think right off the bat
is amazing. The fact that they're also very prismatic. This is an unusual vanadinite.
It is. It's very unusual.
I think it being one of 5 is something special too.
Yeah.
Is this like a new mine or a new find of this?
As far as I know, is one pocket found about 8 or 10 months ago. So it is recent. The better ones sold at Tucson like right away.
I think even though it's a common mineral, this form, there's only 5 of them. It actually makes it a super rare mineral.
It's a very uncommon quality. It's really a good one. It's really a good one.
Yeah, so it's a fun rock, and it was one that I wanted to bring because I think when I kind of think about what is fine minerals in my head, oftentimes I'm going to kind of the descriptions we talked about earlier. I want that one single large one on top. And of course, this one doesn't have that. But I don't think it's messy. I don't think it's not aesthetic. I actually do think it has good aesthetics.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they're isolated enough, like Andy said earlier.
It also has great contrast, too.
Contrast
that
is
builds
another,
in with that dramatic aspect.
Enough relief from the matrix, too.
I'm glad you guys approve of it and like the specimen.
I would expect nothing less.
Maybe we can bring another rock out and talk about one of them.
Yeah, so we can bring out one that's going to be pretty much the complete opposite of this in terms of just overall aesthetic and, color spectrum.
Is it black ugly?
There's part of it. There's part of it that's a black ugly.
Okay.
I'm putting that base there as if I'm going to pretend to know how to put it in. See if I can hold this.
Ooh, it's not a black ugly.
Well, if you cover this, it's a black ugly. But so this is one of the newer Peruvian fluorites with that striking contrast between the bornonite matrix and the bright electric, almost like a phosphophylite green color.
Yeah.
And this really has, that isolation that we mentioned earlier, and it has the drama, the matrix builds up, leading to that culminating focal crystal. And the crystal itself is actually very clear. It's not muddled, it's not milky.
You're right. It's
No internal fractures really, and it's just a perfect piece.
It also has striking symmetry, which I think is very important in a fine mineral. You can look at, it kind of goes in hand with the balance aspect. You want something that's going to be nice and symmetrical, and you want a good matrix to crystal ratio. I think that's a very common debate that we all discuss as collectors and dealers, or delectors if you put the two together.
But this heard that term.
No, Peter McGaw taught me that term.
I like that.
Delector, dealer and collector.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's new for me too. Yeah. I guess I'm one of those.
Yeah, we all are.
Yeah, this has what I call like an inner glow to it.
Yes.
The complex crystallography I like too, the little cube face on top, and the mostly octahedral, and it's very, very nice. Very gemmy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that color's incredibly rare for fluorites.
Right. I mean, even out of the Peruvian ones, which are so famous for this just shocking green color, as if there was a light inside of it,
that one's actually got more blue in it.
Yes,
than
it does.
The majority
it has
of the
more
pocket.
of
Yeah.
I mean, that looks like an alien landscape.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the best minerals are when they look fake.
Yeah, when they don't look like rocks.
I'm gonna you try to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna embarrass myself while you take out a rock,
Those are always
and
difficult,
I'll spend another. That was very fast for me. Look at that.
So what I have here is a liquid watermelon Jolly Rancher that melted.
Ooh.
This is a morganite from Brazil, and it looks like pink ice to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Rosy too.
yeah.
Very rosy.
Yeah, the nicest part about that, I think, is the color is so rich.
Yeah.
You know, you see dissolution morganites, but the majority of them are either colorless to light pink, and that is extremely deep in color.
I like the term pink ice or rose ice. This is definitely, yeah, it's brilliant.
So
It has everything that you want when you look at.
So for it to be a fine mineral and to be, okay, what would we do to this to make it even better? It would be on matrix, right?
I set it on top
You
of
could put it on matrix, and it would be more sculptural. But I feel, I don't know, there is something about this piece just being as is.
Yeah, I like
Generally,
it.
collectors
I do like the floaters when they're like
want
that.
the
I do
I
like
do
it.
like the floaters.
Affinity
Generally,
for it too.
I would say the matrix would add value in most cases. I don't know. I like it the way it is.
No, I agree with you. I'm just trying to think about the definition of a fine mineral.
Sure.
and
Then you would
why
put matrix.
we would want that on there,
Well,
right?
it's the stage for the crystal. The
Right, it's the
matrix.
presentation,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and I think.
But you can't have it here.
You
No,
know,
you
sometimes
can't
you're going to
at all.
miss some of those attributes that we talked about
Right.
earlier. In this case, it doesn't have matrix, right? But it has that high luster and it has the deep color. So, you know, it has the facets of what we, you know, not every mineral is going to have all the checklists, I think, right? And I think that's okay. I think
Yes.
that's understandable. And that's why it's so complicated, because it's piece by piece.
And we would consider, you look at the brilliant etched and dissolution Medinas that Gene Myron and Wayne Thompson brought over. I mean, there's no one who wouldn't refer to those as fine minerals, right?
Of course, absolutely.
And those aren't on matrix; they're all floaters.
So it sounds like we have to forgive some of the things, or we have to be willing to not consider some of the things that actually we feel do define a fine mineral.
Yeah, there's a lot of exceptions. It's like the English language,
Yeah.
right?
We're
we're
dealing-
going to make all these rules and
Yeah.
then we're going to break them all.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with nature. Nature isn't
It's not
perfect or thorough all the time.
And that's part of the fun of collecting
Yeah.
minerals, right? Is that
Right.
it isn't perfect, because I think if it was, we just collect glass, right? And a lot of
Right.
new clients, when they come in, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe you should just collect glass.
Yeah.
Another thing that strikes me about this specimen and that one is, and I don't think this is something you would use as a quality of its quality, but I like holding them.
Oh,
You know?
Yeah.
I've always loved holding gem crystals.
They feel good.
They feel different to me than holding something else. And this one particularly is that way in my mind. This one the same, because it was heavy.
The Bornite.
It's got heft.
It's got heft to it. And, you know, we don't always handle our crystals. We should invite everybody to take our collections and grab them anytime they want.
Right.
But for me, that's part of the love of having a piece this good.
Yeah.
You get to
Being
hold
able
it.
to pass it around.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, there was a collection I looked
It's
at.
emotional, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're
That's a
connecting to
beauty. That is
Thank
a
you.
real beauty. Yeah.
All right, then the opposite. We're going to bring out a mineral that's on the table,
Yeah.
but of course, it's the matrix. So here's a bornonite that I picked up from China that I really like. And it's also got a chalcopyrite on it that's coated. But, you know, the striations are nice, the luster's good, it's terminated. It's just a really flashy metallic specimen. Not everyone's into ugly black rocks, as they call them, but I love them. I love metallics. I think they're cool. Bornonite, you know, until China started producing, was considered extremely rare. I mean, you had basically England, right, as a location to collect from, and they were so expensive, and most of them were in museums. So as a child, I mean, growing up in this industry, I was like, oh man, I want bornonites. And then when China started to produce, you know, I was very happy to add pieces like that to my collection, because you couldn't, you know, 20 or 30 years ago.
The luster is outstanding.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The word architecture comes to mind.
And this one, yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean,
There's
you
one-
could fool me. That looks like a.
You see New York there.
Yeah. It's like, I think I live there.
Yeah, it's like a skyscraper, yeah. It's a
A
modern
nice
day.
parallel, you know, it's
Will, I'm going to let you put that down on the table. But that's very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Now I'll bring out what could not possibly be more opposite of that.
Well, we did good.
We did.
Yeah.
We didn't even plan this.
We've been doing a very good job, aside from me putting all this stuff.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah, thank you. All over the place, ruining this nice setting. So, this is lucite. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what you
So,
brought. Wow, it's
yeah,
so
I know.
colorless.
It's so clear and clean. There's no damage,
Yeah.
right?
Ooh. Here we go.
So here's a nice. This to me is very much a fine mineral. Of course, people know me that I'm a fanatic for.
Do you like
Fluorite.
fluorite?
I actually despise it. But this piece really, for me, checks the boxes because, you know, we can run it down like a checklist. There's the focal crystal at the top.
Mm-hmm.
There's the structure/architecture of it. There's the balance of it because, you know, the purple crystal is oriented this way and then it's flanked by the yellow crystal this way. It has mirror-like luster. I'm not sure if the camera can quite pick it up, but it's very, very glassy. The color is brilliant. And then it has provenance, Ross Lily.
And we should backlight
we're gonna
backlight it.
we're definitely going to backlight it. But the last thing that really gets me with this piece is it's a geologic anomaly that shouldn't exist. And when I spoke with Ross Lilly about this piece, he indicated to me that the way this would have had to have formed was, you know, you look at the blue cube, it's not oriented in the typical tricolor zoning. And he indicated that this blue and purple cube would have had to have formed on the pocket ceiling, and then due to tectonic movement, it got knocked loose and settled atop the already formed yellow portion, which catalyzed this cityscape growth that runs right across the top of the.
Wow, that's incredible. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I
Well, you
think
want to play with the?
this piece
I definitely want to backlight it.
There you go.
It's not only balanced in the crystals themselves, but it's color balanced as well.
I'll have it right here. Let me see if I can get another one. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's also the wrong one. That's also the wrong one.
It's on the other side.
Yeah, there we go.
You
So we
click
can,
it,
yeah, we can do the cold light too.
Yeah, get the cold light up on top
Right.
of that purple blue. We got the.
I'm not sure if we're doing this right. See what we do for rocks
What are you
though?
doing for the last? What was the last elimination? What?
It's like LED, so it's a little
Yeah,
bit warm.
so this is
lighter.
colder.
Oh, colder
I mean, it's
light.
like, all right,
And then
Gotcha.
now I can do the, hold on.
These are great flashlights.
Now here's the
Shout out to
warm.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do the
Me too.
warm light and play with the lighting.
Yeah, I mean, minerals is also all about lighting, right?
Right.
Because the colors depends on the light you use.
Well, I was going to ask you about that in regard to fine minerals. You know, there's some few things that years ago we would have defined a fine mineral as one that wasn't repaired, didn't need extra lighting, didn't need the things that we do today to some of our minerals that now we call fine. Is there a how do you feel about that? You
I mean,
guys were
it's
selling
a-
minerals 40 years ago, but that's what we thought.
Well, but we
40
can
years
go
ago.
back to historic pieces. So
I
let's
was
talk
just
about
gonna,
the steamboat.
just gonna say.
Okay, that's a 100-year-old piece.
Right.
And the steamboat, because they didn't have the technology, has asphalt around it, and then they painted over it because that was the technology they had back.
Wow, right.
Right, so like half that piece is, I mean, in today's market would be considered fake, but it's such a famous piece in the Smithsonian, and it's considered a super fine mineral,
Right.
right? So I mean, it had to do with the magnitude of the specimen, right? The candelabra is repaired.
Yes.
So what? Of
course.
Right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and I think everyone would go, so what? Right.
So we forgive it.
Right,
So
and
we
it's-
forgive it when it's a certain level. Now, if
Right.
each of my little vanadites there was repaired, we'd be like, okay, back.
So I'm also noticing
you know.
these important pieces have names too.
Yes.
And I know that Andy gave this the moniker the step stool, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Because when I hear the candelabra, the steamboat, the step stool, I know exactly.
Right.
It's a lot better than Andy
Right.
trying to explain to me. Oh, it's the,
Glassy
the
fluoride,
purple
weird
fluoride on the
geologic
top.
anomaly, yeah.
The step stool. I'm a big fan and big advocate of naming minerals.
And going back to what you were talking about, you know, restoring and repairing and cleaning, you
Yes.
know, you look at the greatest pieces of art in the world or the greatest cars in the world or any collectible asset.
Right.
Everything is getting restored, everything is getting repaired
Yeah.
because it at one point it did look that way. And I'm not saying, you know, repair any old thing or put a restoration on any old thing, but when you have something that is very famous, very one of a kind, it almost should be restored
And
because
we
you wouldn't
especially-
appreciate it if you
That's
didn't
right.
see what it at one point looked like.
And because of that, again, we especially forgive it. You know,
Right.
we love
Yeah,
it.
right.
So there's a little bit of host rock there, isn't there?
Yeah, so when I originally spoke with Ross about this particular piece, it was actually covered in barite. And then when the initial sale of that all happened,
Let's see.
yeah, it was dissolved away at the lab, and then the beauty of that piece was.
That's an outstanding piece.
Yeah, thank you.
Outstanding.
I really like these yellows with the blues. I think the contrast is so nice.
Right.
Yeah. You did it again, Andy.
I did. I'm doing really well. I usually struggle, but
Is that in there right?
it doesn't fit the right way.
But it's in there good.
So in other words,
Just making sure.
I've heard this several times, subtly in our conversation. I don't think we mentioned as far as characteristics of fine minerals, but where they come from and the stories behind them and the provenance.
Yeah.
That's really important too.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely another aspect. You have a piece from an established collector, that's either, sort of aging out or has passed away. And then that can be exciting, or when they decide to just deaccession a big chunk of their collection, right? Right. So Troy can actually talk about that with
I'm very proud to say this is from the Span collection. And thank you, Jim and Gail, for allowing this one to come this way. And yeah, I do. I keep the old, I have a bunch of old cards and...
There's part of the provenance.
Yeah,
There,
and got
the
this
record
from
of
my
it
guys,
now, yeah.
my friends over at Collector's Edge. And I have my Span mineral. So yeah, I keep these. I hold on to these.
You bet. I mean, it's part of the story. It's part of the story.
It is. It's part of the story.
And the provenance thing goes a long way because you can hold a baseball in one hand and it's a baseball, and then you have a baseball that Babe Ruth signed. They're both baseballs, but one baseball is substantially more important.
Oh, the story.
Right.
Every one of these has a story.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Some are 15-minute long stories and some are 30-second stories. But
And they're
still great stories.
right, and they're all older than all of us.
Yeah, I mean, most of these minerals are,
hundreds of thousands or millions.
Millions of years
Right.
old. I know the dates of the
Millions.
San Diego pegmatites very well. So Himalaya mine is like 99 million years old.
Yeah.
So these things were forming.
And they'll be here long after
and they'll be
us.
long after us, exactly. So, very interesting to learn about that as well, right?
So have we left anything out about what defines a fine mineral? Have we covered all the...
Oh, I'm
bases
sure we've
there?
left things
There
out.
is no one definition.
Right.
I think it's take kind of from this conversation and pick the parts that you agree with, because you're going to have a different definition.
Well, I said earlier today in a different conversation that it's really a very personal thing. Really.
It's why collections vary so much.
Right.
You look at certain people's collections and you're like, well, that's not really my taste. We use my taste or their
always.
taste all the time.
Right.
And we're saying that because what makes a fine mineral is so different for each collector. And the collectors are the ones that are kind of, defining it at the end of the day because they're the one buying and building these collections, right? And so, obviously if they have, I don't know, 200 pyrite specimens from Spain, that are very standard, just a single cube. I mean, they can say they're fine specimens, but I mean, we know we can go down to the show there and get 50 of them. Very common, right? So normally we wouldn't maybe consider, those more like commercial grade, but still nice minerals, right? So there's generally, that's why scarcity I think comes in to it, as well as all the other attributes.
One thing I've always thought is that every one of these is unique. You may be able to get a piece from the same locality, maybe even a pocket away, and it won't look like that. And compared to like the coin collector, if you have a rare antique, rare coin, and your buddy down the street has one also, they're going to look exactly the same.
Yeah, it's just the grade that might be different.
No way, right.
Yeah.
There's no way in the world you're going to find two of these that look just like that.
Just like that. Yeah, they're generally, so there are 5 pieces from that pocket. The crystal habits are all the same. Size of the crystals and the orientations of the crystal, totally different. So you could look at those 5 and one can be your favorite and the other 3 not be for you or 4 for you. And it's very interesting that way. And I think when you're collecting fine minerals, that's kind of what draws you in, is the uniqueness. Each one is special.
I think it's important to not be discouraged if someone doesn't like your specimen. The same as I may like Indian food, you may like Thai food, you may like American food.
It's true.
It doesn't mean
Doesn't
that
matter.
it's not a great
Right.
specimen.
That's right.
Not everybody's going to agree on the same rock.
That's right. What if 5 years from now, in Peru, they come up with other green fluorides that make this one look inferior. That's still a fine mineral, though, right?
I'd be a little sad, but
Right.
I think the only thing that changes is value goes down for
Yeah.
a short period of time. But generally, the market absorbs it and then it goes back up.
I agree with that.
It's
100%.
typically I would
So-
define the mineral industry as a bullish market because there is, no matter how you look at it, there is never going to be a duplicate. You can't get another one. And Troy can speak to this, with the Emerald exhibition that they did. You can't just go buy another one. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be another one.
That's
It will
right.
not be the same.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's a certain degree of motivation when you're buying these, knowing that this is the only one that will ever look like this. And I think that will always have a value, whether or not it's monetary. I'm not sure.
Yeah. One of my favorite of those emeralds is the Three Amigos.
Oh, of course.
In the Irv Brown collection.
Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, you could cough up 10 times the amount of money that that collector's asking, and I couldn't bring you another one.
Right.
I really couldn't, and
Right.
I think that's what's so special about those really fine specimens.
Which is why it's so hard to value minerals, because they are each
That's
one
right.
so unique. It's very much like art, but at least in art, if the artist is still alive, you can maybe commission a piece and maybe it'll be a derivative of it. But with minerals, you're just left with what nature gave you, and sometimes there's only one.
Yeah, I've asked the earth to make me more.
I was going to
emeralds.
say, you can call Mother Nature all you want, but she's
Yeah.
not going to make another one.
Yeah, or she takes a long time.
Yeah, we would all be gone.
Yeah,
anyways,
99 million
so-
years is a long time to wait.
Yeah, I set an alarm on my phone.
Yeah.
So this interests me, always has. I understand what you're saying so well, but it's to me it's art.
Yeah.
So why is it that so many people don't understand what they're looking at here? They don't have this appreciation of the beauty of this as the way we do. But they'll love to look at a piece of art, and museums will put it in, and thousands of people come and look at it. This to me is almost more interesting.
So
it is
Dave,
more interesting.
I ran a gallery for 5 years, a mineral gallery in New York City.
Yeah.
I was right in the center of the art district in
Right.
Chelsea, Manhattan. And the first question people would ask me when they walked in is, "Who's the artist?" And I would
Wow.
say there is no artist.
Wow.
And they kind of had a perplexed look on their face, and I had to tell them, no, these are all natural. And they said, well, who did the shaping? I said, nobody. Well, who colored them? Nobody.
Wow.
It takes a little
I
time.
I get the questions.
Yeah.
So when you told them, how did they feel? Were they,
They were
embarrassed or felt naive, or were
Their minds were blown, actually. Even a simple pyrite cube for us is something we see almost every day. Some people will not actually believe you. You have to kind of show them proof that these are natural and unpolished. So yeah, their minds were blown, actually.
Did they make them more interested, or
Definitely.
more like, then I don't understand it, so therefore I'm not going to ask anything more? I mean,
They didn't understand it in terms of collecting yet because it's brand new and it's a whole new market. They thought it was sculptures.
right.
And when they found out it was a natural sculpture, they really had to. They would come back. They would come back for different exhibitions,
Interesting.
and then they started to understand. That They
Okay.
needed to see it over and over again.
Okay.
And that was one of the motivations behind the Emerald exhibition, because a random person off the street is not going to know what I'm talking about when I say this is a vanadinite.
Right.
But everybody knows an emerald.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it goes back to marketing, right?
Yeah.
Artwork has a rich history in human nature because we've been telling stories and retelling stories, and art is
Right.
part of that. And that's that emotion that you talk about. And this is one step away from that because that's like human to human interaction and this human and earth interaction. And I think it's easier for the human and human interaction and to understand that right away. I feel like this takes a little bit more time. And of course, your exposure. So if you're not going to the Smithsonian or the American Museum
Right.
or whatever when you're growing up, or to a local mineral show, like Troy said, the general public most of the time thinks that we make these shapes and we make these colors, and they're not, natural.
Well, then how do you market them? How do you market them so more people understand what we love?
Isn't that what we're doing right here?
Yeah.
I think we're preaching to the choir though now.
Sure, but I think that there's a potential, through social media or through marketing campaigns online, because your reach is literally the whole world now. We are in a different place, right, that we were 20, 30 years ago,
Right.
where it was so much harder. And I think that as we continue to go forward, and we're producing less every year, that's the other thing too. So it used to be more dangerous to collect, especially at higher dollar numbers. because I can tell you about a matrix aquamarine from Brazil. It's now in the GIA museum. It's a matrix about this with an aquamarine like this. Description sounds great, right? But in today's market, who cares? And now on top of that, it's from Brazil, and it's kind of green and milky. That sold for $10,000 back in the 70s. That's like, huge money today. And that was considered the finest aquamarine matrix specimen in the world at the time. It was in Ed Sabota's collection, and somehow my dad ended up getting it back, and then we sold it to GIA. And today you wouldn't even look at it. And so that's the problem, is that you had all these, but now production is so low compared to the last 20, 30 years. I mean, it's such a different world than it was. China opened up for the first time, right? Started mining. And even my Chinese suppliers now telling me, we don't have much. They're starting to worry, what are we going to do? And they're starting to compete with me. They're going to Pakistan. They're going to Morocco.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see them become more like worldwide dealers, international dealers, rather than just selling their native local specimens.
Yeah, I buy some Brazilian specimens from China now.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way of the world, because everyone's mining, but not everyone's producing, and that's the.
That could change. I mean.
Of course, it can always change.
Yeah.
But I don't see the production of the levels of like the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Well, it kind of seemed to be, there was Russia, and with the big rush, and India had a big rush, and China recently had a big rush, and they went away, those supplies. Brazil kind of comes and goes. Maybe there'll be another one though sometime.
Sure. You can't predict the future, but also the market has grown. So it seems you used to go to Tucson and I could walk around and be like, wow, there's a big new find. It gets absorbed before Tucson even happens.
That's true.
So, as much as there maybe are some productions, they're not big enough. Like the last one was Milpias, where it just produced so much. The market could physically not absorb it, and you still see it at the show today.
Yeah.
Right? There's still Milpias, there's quite a few on
Great
the floor.
ones, too.
Yeah, and they're great ones, that's what I mean. But we haven't had a find like that in a while. It'd be like this, 5 pieces, gone.
Right.
Immediately. 5 pieces is nothing.
Marketing those new finds is something important too. For example, if you were to say to somebody, the new vanadinite find, they might not know what you're talking about, but everyone in this room would know if I said, have you guys seen mango quartz?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's true.
I think that's
so
where
important. It has to be like a certain level, right? This is like too rare.
It's too rare. Yes. It's hard to market.
It's hard to market. Yeah, there's only 5 pieces, and honestly, they get absorbed so fast.
Yeah.
You can't even market.
You're right. You can't even market. There needs to be enough of the production. Yeah. But I do work. Going back to what you said, actually, there's no human to human because you're trying to connect with a mineral. That's what I work on with my exhibitions, putting them with something that you can connect to.
I love the way you do with that.
So I had like candy.
Yeah.
I had
remember that one.
The Odyssey poem.
Uh-huh.
And I try to do things that people can connect to, because you're right, there is no artist.
Obviously, there is human-to-human interaction. We've talked about that
dealers,
today,
yeah.
right? Well, not that the provenance, right? The provenance,
True.
dug it, things like that. There is a ton, but unless you're in the industry, right? When you walk in and you don't know anything, and you don't even know that's a fluorite, you think it's a piece of glass or whatever you think it is, right? It's not so obvious right off the front bat. You have to learn a lot of the context, right? Which is a word I use a lot now that I borrowed from art, because I also collect art. So for me, it's very easy to kind of, I think they're very similar actually. Each painting is a 101. Each mineral is a 101.
What's the context?
And then learning the context. So, this is a 12 by 16 versus a 48 by 32, right? Okay, we have a miniature versus a thumbnail versus a large cabinet, right? So, and then this is an oil versus a watercolor, and so there's so many little things to learn in each of these hobbies that you can apply from one to the other actually pretty easily.
So relate it to people's lives too. That's what the emerald, everybody knew what the emerald green was.
Well, it was not just Emerald Show, it was Fear's Tears. So it was a legend of the pre-Columbian people. So I always try to bring some kind of context of culture, or just something you can connect to. So my candy exhibition was more than candy. It was my thought process was what was our first introduction to beauty? And what better than a candy, a Jolly Rancher, something bright, shiny,
right,
colorful,
and colorful than candy.
Right.
That was when we're a couple years old,
And of course, we're excited because we love candy,
Yeah,
especially as a
I
kid,
used
right?
To collect candy. I had more candy.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they were colorful and small, and I like to collect them.
Pez, remember the Pez?
Yeah,
Pez,
Pez, yeah.
Pez.
I like to relate people, use the uses of the minerals in our lives to have people relate to what it is that we're seeing in front of us. Like the beryllium in this is the hardening agent in steel production. You know, fluoride has fluoride. We have this in our toothpaste. You know, and I think people can say, "Oh, really? That's where that comes from." You know, so I think that's something that people can relate to. You guys, this has been really fun.
Yeah,
I
thank you for
appreciate
having
this.
us.
No,
Yeah.
no problem.
And thanks for bringing these, because these are really candy to look at.
And shout out
Candy
to
to the
Mineral
eye.
Nation. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is great.